From the campus of the University of Kentucky, this is Behind the Blue. I'm Cody Kaiser with UK Strategic Communications.
As an investigator, I'm a little nervous when I had to involve in the phase 1 study just because we don't know what we are subjecting our patients to. It hasn't been tested. So I waited till the phase 1 study is completed and we have the data to really say that it is safe. And to our surprise, when we used this treatment in our autoimmune patients, it was much, much safer. So this was the first phase 2 trial in the world. We know that this, to really participate in this study, we need the collaboration of our hematology oncology division. They have participated in multiple cell therapy trials, so that gave us an upper hand.
That's Dr. Paramarajan Piranavan, Chief of the Division of Rheumatology at UK Healthcare. A UK healthcare patient who has lived with severe lupus for more than 20 years recently became the second patient in the United States to receive an experimental CAR T-cell therapy through a phase 2 clinical trial. CAR T is most often associated with blood cancers. In this study, researchers are testing whether the same basic approach might help patients with severe, treatment-resistant lupus by targeting the immune cells driving the disease. The patient had already tried multiple therapies without lasting success. Her physicians believed the trial offered a new possibility, but also one that required careful screening, chemotherapy, hospitalization, and close monitoring. In this episode, we'll hear more from Dr. Piranavan and Dr. Isabella Antic, the patient's primary rheumatologist and a sub-investigator on the study. They explain what lupus does to the immune system, how CAR T therapy may be able to interrupt that process, what it took to bring a trial this complex to UK, and why researchers are hopeful while remaining careful about what can be concluded this early. We'll begin with the disease itself.
Systemic lupus is a form of lupus that attacks the whole body or could potentially attack the whole body in individuals who have the disease. So it is categorized as what's called an autoimmune disease. In simple or lay terms, that means the immune system that's supposed to protect us is trying to attack us. So usually we have what's called tolerance to our own body, but there is, at some point in these individuals, there is breakage of tolerance. So the immune system identifies certain proteins in the body as foreign and has an eternal battle against yourself. All these diseases we call autoimmune diseases, but in lupus specifically, we all are made out of cells, and each cell has something called nucleus. Most of your attack is against the cell nucleus. So all of our cells have, majority of our cells have nucleus, so virtually this can attack all organs. So this is a multi-systemic disease.
One reason lupus is so difficult to treat is that the immune system remembers the mistaken target. The same immune memory that normally protects us from infection can help perpetuate the autoimmune attack. How the disease appears also can vary widely from one patient to another.
In every individual, the disease is different, but there is a unique group of patients that it only attacks the skin. Which we call like a cutaneous lupus, which only manifests in the skin. And some patients who have the skin lupus can progress into a systemic lupus. And in others, it only attacks just one organ, like the kidneys or sometimes the brain. And some of them, again, it can, or involve the other organs later. But then there are at least half of the population, it usually multisystemic. That means it affects multiple organs at the same time, or in different times. Yeah.
For some patients, lupus can be controlled with medication. But when doctors have exhausted the available therapies and the disease remains active, they then describe it as refractory lupus.
Prednisone, when you use it for short term, save lives, saves organs, but when you use long term, it actually causes a lot of damage to our patients. So we were hunting for medications that would replace the use of prednisone, so it can control the inflammation but would not cause any harm to the patients. So from 1955 was a medicine called hydroxychloroquine was approved for lupus. After that, the next medicine was only approved in 2010. So there was a huge gap for several years that we did not have any advancement in almost all the clinical trials they tried actually failed. So, but after 2010, there's some awareness, and so we tried to change how we do the clinical trials, how to recruit patients, and more advancement in how we study the immune system. So with this, the next drug was approved in 2021. And then, so we only have very handful of drugs that we could use to treat lupus. So if we couldn't control their disease, then we call them refractory disease.
That was the situation facing the UK healthcare patient in this study. She had lived with lupus for more than 2 decades. Her disease remained active despite multiple treatments, and some of those treatments had caused allergic reactions. When UK opened the CAR-T trial, Dr. Isabella Antic began to think her patient might qualify.
Under the guidance of Dr. Piranavan here and his work in creating this as a possibility for our patients, once he opened up sort of the faculty to recruiting patients, it was sort of in the back of my mind, if we have somebody sick enough that's failed enough therapies and has such an aggressive form of lupus, that we have something we could offer them. And the specific patient, I actually saw first with our fellows, which are our rheumatology trainees. And so I saw her in clinic and just noticed early on how sick she was and how many therapies she had failed and how active her disease was despite multiple therapies. And so it was such a good thing to be able to offer to her and talking to her about risks, benefits, and she really was very open to trying something because she had suffered through this disease for a very long time and was refractory to many treatments.
The trial was not being offered as an easy next step. It was intended for patients with severe disease who had already failed advanced therapies. For this patient, the possibility of drug-free remission made the risks worth considering.
Once I knew how aggressive her disease was and she had seen multiple rheumatologists having moved across the country for various reasons. And, when I brought it up to her, I told her, we have this new study available. I think you would probably meet the qualifications based on your history. Because she had failed so many things or had even allergic reactions to some of the treatments we had tried, she was very enthusiastic to try something that could possibly give her a chance at being in a drug-free remission, which is our goal with this therapy. And so once I went over all of that with her, and then we kind of dug deeper and gave her all the risks and benefits of the study, and Dr. Piranavan spoke to her, she was very enthusiastic to go forth with it because of how much she had already suffered from the disease.
The treatment being offered was originally developed for a very different kind of disease. CAR-T cell therapy has been used primarily against blood cancers, but researchers began to see a possible connection. Some cancers and some autoimmune diseases are both driven by B cells. That opened the door to a new question. Could a therapy designed to eliminate cancerous B cells also eliminate the B cells driving lupus?
The CAR-Ts, basically, it stands for chimeric antigen receptor T cell therapy. So we have several types of immune cells called all the immune cells are different types of white blood cells. And these white blood cells, one of the important subtype is called T cells. And T cell is it has an important role in eliminating infections. It also has an important role in eliminating cancers. So the T cells can identify the cancer cell or the virally infected cell, and they have a killing mechanism, so it can kill them. So in 2012, for what we thought is there's a specific type of leukemia it comes from another type of white blood cell called B cell. So in 2012, for the first time that the CAR T was used in the cancer world. So basically, there was a type of leukemia that comes from a different type of white blood cell called B cell. So what the researchers thought was that if you take out the patient's own T cell and then engineer it to attack the B cell that has become cancerous, the T cell will eliminate the B cell so that the patient can become cancer-free. Why we take the patient's own T cell is because if we try to give another person's T cell, that becomes foreign, so the immune system can reject it. So by taking patient's own T cells and engineer it back and infuse it back to really kill all the B cells, and it was very successful. For the first time, that patient who received the CAR T as a child, she had the cure from the leukemia. So after that, there were different CAR T products that have been approved for leukemia and lymphoma and has been quite successful in the oncology world. We in rheumatology also deal with several immune-mediated diseases that are driven by B cells. So if the CAR T cells can eliminate B cells that are cancerous, we also could use the same technology to eliminate the B cells that attack our own body. So that concept was first experimented by a German physician called Dr. Schett, and he has administered this same type of CAR T cell therapy to lupus patients in 2021. So the surprise was those were refractory 5 lupus individuals. And the surprise was all of those patients achieved what we call drug-free remission. So that led to, try this in several other patients. So I think in 2023 that he has presented in the American College of Rheumatology about studying this on a variety of autoimmune diseases, and the success rate was really good. So that has led to more than 30 different pharmaceutical companies to really to investigate this in different type of autoimmune diseases.
One reason lupus can become chronic is that the immune system remembers the mistaken target. That same immune memory normally helps protect the body from infections, but in an autoimmune disease, it can keep the attack going. The hope with CAR T is that removing the B cells driving the disease may allow the immune system to rebuild without that harmful memory.
If we eliminate the B cells, the body makes the B cells back immediately. But the B cells that are made actually have no memory to attack our cells. So that's why the term immune reset means they are like naive B cells, that they don't have any memory to attack our cells. So that's correct. That is an immune reset.
The idea is promising, but the treatment itself is complex. Before a patient can receive the engineered cells, the research team has to confirm that the disease is severe enough, that other advanced therapies have failed, and that the patient can safely undergo the process. Then comes cell collection, genetic modification, chemotherapy, infusion, and close hospital monitoring. For the patient in this study, that journey began with an extensive screening process.
The process is about, because initially when they were trying this, they wanted to study this on people who have a very severe active lupus. So we have several tools to really grade the lupus disease activity. So they have to have at least one organ severe disease activity to become eligible for this study. And they also have failed at least 2 advanced therapies, and despite that, they have severe disease activity. So that is, in simple language, the eligibility criteria. And so this requires a long process, because this is a type of CAR T called the autologous CAR T. That means we are taking the T cells from the patients. So the first step is once we determine a patient is eligible, we will go through all the questionnaire, the inclusion and exclusion criteria, and then once we determine the patient is eligible, then we will be taking their own T cells out. So this process is called leukapheresis. There's a machine, something similar to the dialysis machine, which will extract their white blood cells, and they will count. And once they extracted enough number of white blood cells, they'll stop the process. And these white blood cells, and then they'll separate the type of cells called T cells, and then these T cells will be enriched. And then using a viral vector, they will make sure that the T cells express a receptor that will target our desired target in the B cells. And then they will infuse these cells back. Now, when this technology was developed, from the time they take the T cells to infuse back to the patient, it was like 6 to 8 weeks. But now, with the advance in technology, that it's been shortened to just 2 weeks.
Before those engineered cells are returned, the patient receives several days of chemotherapy. The chemotherapy is not being used to treat the lupus directly. Instead, it creates space for the modified T cells and reduces the chance that the body will reject them. It also temporarily weakens the immune system, which is one reason the patient must be monitored so closely.
So the chemotherapy, the 3 days, can sometimes make your white blood cell to go very low. And that small window, like 1 to 2 weeks, because your immune system is so low, and then you are really increased risk of infections. So that's one reason that why we are scared of. And the number 2 is when the administered cells, when they try to do the desired effect, sometimes they release some chemicals that can dilate your blood vessels, that can cause confusion, and so we just have to. These effects were noticed when these medications were used in the cancer treatment. So that we just take the same precautions here as well.
For this trial, those precautions include a 14-day hospital stay after the infusion. The research team watches for infection, changes in blood pressure or breathing, neurological symptoms, and other possible complications while the engineered cells begin doing their work. The patient in this study completed the cell collection, chemotherapy, infusion, and initial hospital stay. She later returned to the hospital after developing hives, but her physicians say she didn't experience the most severe complications associated with CAR-T. She continues to be monitored closely for both side effects and signs of lupus activity. That treatment process requires much more than one physician or one specialty beyond rheumatology. It also depends on teams with experience in cellular therapy, chemotherapy, inpatient care, immune complications, and clinical trial coordination. For UK to offer this study, all of those pieces had to come together.
We had a very supportive team. Dr. Piranavan is the leader of the study and one of the sub-investigators, but we had our Center for Clinical and Translational Science involved, and without them, we couldn't have really logistically made this happen for this patient. So having their input, Dorothy Ross, who is one of the leaders in terms of logistically making sure everything happens for her and keeping us on track with the study, was an important part. And then also the hematology oncology unit that helped us monitor her from an aspect of that they deal with these patients from a cancer perspective, but knew sort of what to look out for and had protocols in place that would help us be able to monitor this patient appropriately.
UK already had years of experience providing cellular therapies for patients with blood cancers through the Markey Cancer Center. That infrastructure gave the rheumatology team a foundation to build upon. But Dr. Piranavan says having the facilities and protocols was only part of it. The trial also required cancer specialists who were willing to apply their experience to patients with autoimmune disease, and institutional leaders willing to support the demands of an intensive research protocol.
The infrastructure is very important. So because if the UK has not participated in the cell therapy trials for cancer, it would be difficult for us to stand where we stand right now. So that really helped us because UK participated in all these in cell therapy trials a decade ago, and continue to expand for our patients with cancer. So that helped us to have a very solid, robust infrastructure for the cell therapy. Number two is also that the roadblock for many institutions was more than the infrastructure. It was the open mindset. Now, many of the oncologists were really not willing to offer this to non-cancer patients because this technology was developed for cancer patients, and they don't know much about what a lupus patient goes through. So we are not going to participate in any of these non-cancer studies. So that open mindset by our hematology oncology division, no, we are going to open up. Patients are patients, and so we are not going. So we are going to open up this study for the non-oncology indications. So they are partnering with rheumatology as well as neurology, because in neurology also there are some immune-mediated diseases to really offer this cell therapy trial. So that collaboration is key. And the number three is to really admit a patient in the hospital for 14 days for a research purpose. So the UK leadership has to agree with that, because so that was another important thing. Because when I talked to all over the country with several other investigators, for some of them, it's the leader administration is not allowing them to admit for like 14 days. And in some other people, their hematology oncology team is not cooperating for non-oncology studies. And in some institutions, they don't have the infrastructure. We were fortunate, we had all three.
The study is sponsored by Novartis and is the first phase 2 clinical trial of this approach for lupus. But bringing the protocol to Kentucky required UK teams to translate experience from cancer care into a new clinical setting, coordinating rheumatology, hematology and oncology, cell therapy specialists, research staff, inpatient teams, and university leadership. That collaboration made it possible not only to activate the trial, but to identify, enroll, and treat the second patient in the United States.
There were 8 centers at the time initially who were recruiting patients. But one of the things, we had patients from like California, Florida, was reaching out to us saying that could they become part of this study. One of the complaints that they said is they were reaching out to many other centers and they're not getting emails back, and we always talk to them immediately and at least set up a virtual interview and explain the inclusion-exclusion criteria. So it was a big deal for us. So Midwest is always considered sometimes behind in terms of the scientific advancement. So we were really running a race just to make this trial activated here and also successfully recruit our first patient. And fortunately that from the CCTS point and hematology oncology, all the internal medicine leadership were very helpful in activating the study, and even if there is one roadblock, this would not be possible.
For the teams involved, activating the trial was a major scientific and operational milestone. For the patient, the decision was far more personal. Participating meant accepting chemotherapy, hospitalization, possible serious side effects, and an outcome no one could guarantee. But after more than 20 years of living with severe lupus and exhausting treatment after treatment, she was ready to consider that risk.
I think it's how much her body and mind have suffered from the disease, and how much of a toll it's taken on her health, quality of life, family, and because of the many years that she's dealt with it, at least 20, if not a little over 20 years, she was ready to live her life and see her children grow and have grandchildren and things like that, that I think she was worried at this point her trajectory wouldn't allow her to do. And so I think that really allowed her to go all in very early on.
Her decision also carries weight beyond her own treatment. Every early participant gives researchers information they could not collect any other way about safety, side effects, response, and whether the therapy's benefits can last.
Extremely important because they set a precedent for future use of these types of drugs, medications, treatments, and can really change the landscape of how we treat these patients in the future. So very pivotal. What she's done is not just for herself, but for the whole lupus community.
The patient has described living with symptoms that were often invisible to the people around her, working, caring for her family, and appearing well even when she was in pain or exhausted. She has said that for years, her hopes were measured in family milestones, seeing her children graduate, watching them build their lives, and one day meeting her grandchildren. The next question is whether the treatment can deliver what both the patient and the research team are hoping for. At the time of this episode, she had completed the infusion and the initial hospital stay, and had entered the close monitoring phase of the study. Her doctors were watching for two things: complications from the treatment and evidence that her lupus remained under control.
We officially started recruiting and screening her early April, late March. And she has since then done leukapheresis, which Dr. Piranavan talked about, the lymphodepletion regimen, and then she's also received the CAR T therapy and completed her 14-day hospital stay for monitoring. And now we are a few weeks out from that, and we're continually monitoring her with the study. There's protocols we have to follow, but she's done well throughout so far. There have been things we're still monitoring her for, but from a lupus perspective, we haven't seen her lupus become worse, but there are still things we're monitoring, and we have to continue monitoring for from a lupus perspective and from a side effect perspective of receiving the treatment. I mean, we're still treading, lightly in the sense she's the second patient in the U.S., and we want to be cautious and very monitor her very closely, but I do think she's happy from that aspect thus far. And we're hoping just for continually the best outcome for her with this.
For this study, the goal was not simply that the patient feels better for a short period of time. Researchers are looking for remission, no measurable disease activity, and no need for medications to control the lupus. The real test is whether that condition can be maintained over time.
And important thing is to really continue to have remission is one of the milestones that we try to achieve. So we have a target in lupus, what's called DORIS remission. Basically, this tells that your disease activity score has to be 0, and then you should not use any prednisone. So that is our goal, and then we have reached that goal right now in terms of she had to take prednisone for an allergic reaction, but otherwise not for the disease. So we have to maintain that for the months or years to come. So that's a milestone for this patient, and obviously not to develop any side effects. Usually the risk is only in the first few weeks. So if she has overcome that, she'll do well. And so far everything good. In terms of the clinical trial, we want to offer this to as many patients who are eligible. So that's our goal, and so there are 2 portions of the trial. So this is available for the general systemic lupus, and it's also available for people with lupus nephritis, which is lupus that's attacking the kidney. So there is a subtype called class 3 or class 4, and that particular subtype also is eligible. So we are trying to recruit patients who are eligible for this study as well. Yeah.
At the time of this interview, the patient had reached the study's remission target. But in lupus, remission and cure are not the same thing. The earliest patients treated with similar CAR T approaches have now been followed for several years. Many have remained off their lupus medications without the disease returning. Still, researchers don't yet know whether that response will last for a decade or for the rest of a patient's life.
In the last, the National Rheumatology Scientific Meeting, like it was November of 2025, that we had the data, at least because Germany started this first, they have the longest data. So at least they said more than 95% of the patients, like up to 4 years, they're on drug-free remission. The reason why we use the term remission, not cure, is just because we always wonder whether the disease could come back again, because we have had patients who have remission for like few years and then the disease becomes active later. So that's why we may be using the drug-free remission term until we have like maybe 10-year data or 15-year data, and potentially thereafter we may use the term cure. But for the time being, I think drug-free remission is the appropriate term. So, yeah. For this particular trial, because it's been only going on for 1 year, so we cannot talk about the drug-free remission for pertinent to this study here.
That caution applies not only to the word cure, but to the trial itself. One patient's result cannot establish whether a therapy is safe or effective. Researchers need to see whether the same response appears across the full study population, whether serious side effects remain uncommon, and whether remission lasts.
Of course, the science is advancing, so just want to acknowledge. So this is currently at the clinical trial stage, so it has to go through the complete trial, and so once the trial is completed, because one trial data is one patient's results is not the answer. So we have to wait for all the patients, because they would like to have like at least 40 patients completed, and then that data would be available. So that is the key. We have to make sure that we observe the same effect as it was observed in the phase 1 study, and also in the other patients who had undergone experimental therapy. So we have to replicate the same effect and make sure it's safe. So once it's that, and we will have more studies coming, like the phase 3 studies available for it. So in one way, I would say that people who have severe disease, refractory disease, there is hope. Not just because of only this study, there are many other different types of cell therapy products, and with many other industry partners, the clinical trials are currently ongoing, and also it's going to become available for many other diseases as well. So the phase 2 trials are also ongoing for the other systemic autoimmune diseases, such as systemic sclerosis, vasculitis, and a disease called myositis. So many of these diseases that we thought that at some point that we won't have cure or like drug-free remission, or would not be able to control when they become refractory, now we have hope.
UK plans to continue enrolling eligible patients with severe systemic lupus and certain forms of lupus nephritis. The goal is to learn whether the remission seen in early studies can be reproduced safely, and whether the effect lasts long enough to change how doctors think about treating severe autoimmune disease. For patients who have exhausted the available options, even that possibility represents a major shift. For this patient, the hope is that remission will last, and that life can become less defined by flares, medications, and the damage lupus has caused over more than 2 decades. For the research team, the work continues, monitoring her progress, enrolling additional patients, and gathering the evidence needed to understand whether this approach can safely produce lasting, drug-free remission. Those answers will take time. This remains an experimental therapy, and one patient's experience cannot determine whether it will work for others. But the trial represents an important shift in how researchers are thinking about severe autoimmune disease, moving beyond repeatedly suppressing the immune system and asking whether it may be possible to reset it. Dr. Paramarajan Piranavan is Chief of the Division of Rheumatology at UK. Dr. Isabella Antic is a UK healthcare rheumatologist and a sub-investigator on the study. Thanks for listening to Behind the Blue. Behind the Blue is a production of the University of Kentucky. For more stories about how the University of Kentucky is advancing our Commonwealth, visit uknow.uky.edu.